here's the situation. Increasingly, there's talk of including nuclear energy within the energy mix of South Africa and other economies in general. And we know that uranium is an important component of that. With the growing importance of nuclear energy, are we going to see a growing prominence of uranium?
Yeah, hi Loretta. I think so. I think nuclear energy. If you look at the energy mix of Europe, for instance, France especially, they've had a high proportion of nuclear energy. I think nuclear energy will always provide that baseload role along with coal and gas turbines. With renewable energy coming in, you can't really get more than sort of 20% of your energy mix being renewables. It's just not that reliable. So nuclear energy is always there, and I think uranium and thorium to some degree will become more important. Yeah.
Now, outside of the energy situation, do we see an interest in uranium mining? Because we're told that it's an offset of gold mining, and as we're seeing gold reserves depleted, that is an opportunity to move into the sector.
Absolutely. I think the problem is the uranium price did have a huge run up a couple of years ago, and it's come off substantially and sort of stayed there. The uranium price is really determined by a poll of journalists. It's not a freely traded market. It's a very difficult market to price. The problem is that a lot of these new efficient stations are using less and less uranium. So because of the efficiency, there's not just that much demand for it. And of course, uranium and thorium give you a big bang for your buck. So you don't need a huge amount to mine. Yeah.
Now, are there a substantial number of players in the sector? We're told by a South Korean study that by 2030, which is 20 years from now, there'll be about 430 nuclear plants globally. So there's lots of room for maneuver because the cost of investment will be $1 trillion US.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the capital side, the cost of investment is coming down, and we're looking at much smaller modular type of plants, like the pebble bed plants, which are a lot easier to finance and get going. And I think you'll see a lot more of that fragmentation. On the production side, though, on the mining side, it's very difficult to get into production. And of course, the security issues around the refinement of uranium really prevent a lot of people getting into that sector. So I think on the production side, you'll continue to see it dominated by one or two big players.
Right.
But of course, on the generation side, that'll certainly expand.
Now, we're also living in an era of the green agenda, the green revolution, cleaner energy, and within the United States, they think that a more suitable alternative is to build small modular reactors, which will be about the size, a third of the size of the current plants. How does that impact on the viability of uranium mines?
Yeah, well, the problem with nuclear energy has always been disposing of the waste. There's no emissions, so in that regard, it suits the carbon agenda. But of course, with the fuel becoming smaller and like the small modular pebble bed reactors, there's far less of a problem with waste in that regard. But of course, you still have to deal with this waste which sits there in the system for 20, 30 years afterwards.
Okay, Lumkile, I mean, as we go scrabbling for more mineral resources to utilize within the industrial process, and we're looking for different ways of generating energy, do you think the future of uranium is bright?
It is very bright, but for us, as Bevan was talking, we're very keen on nuclear. As you know, we invested on the pebble bed, and unfortunately, with the global meltdown, the state cannot afford being a partner in the pebble bed nuclear reactor. Right. But I think that agenda is still on the table. As our financials improve, probably will continue with the implementation of the nuclear reactor. But I think going forward, we've seen countries like Finland are going to be putting 2 more. I think they've just finished the bidding process. Right. So there's really an acceptance that uranium in the greener agenda, nuclear is going to play a bigger part in the energy mix.
Right. Just in terms of people wanting to invest in uranium, if there isn't a consistent and infrastructure for trading uranium stocks, for instance, how do people go about it? Because we're told that uranium exposure on the markets is at about 8%.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the Canadian stocks like Cameco, you've got Rossing Uranium, and I guess you can look at the large diversified miners, because, I mean, someone even like BHP Billiton will obviously have uranium exposure. Some of the gold miners, of course, as we've mentioned, I think Sims and Jack, First Uranium, etc. Those stocks, though, tend to be quite marginally traded. They're not very liquid, so you see a lot of big moves in those stocks. As I said, I don't think the actual uranium price will ever become fully commoditized. It's just too small a sector. But I think if you just track the gold stocks, you'll get quite a bit of exposure.
Just in terms of new frontiers for uranium, you've got quite a lot of African countries that have uranium deposits, from Algeria through to Morocco in the Maghreb, Botswana, Niger is a prolific producer, Malawi, Tanzania, Central African Republic, and many more. Now, some of these are countries emerging from war, some of these are countries with abject poverty, some of these are countries which don't have any other mineral deposits like Niger, but has a substantial reserve in terms of uranium, and they need to utilize that in one way or another.
Absolutely, yeah. I think if they can build the infrastructure, if the capital is there to fund the infrastructure, those countries that are traditionally thermal operated, either being coal, etc., will turn more and more towards uranium. You've got countries in sort of Central Africa which are largely hydro-powered, and that'll probably stay because just because of the economies of the power mix there. I mean, an interesting country like France, for instance, really benefits from pushing up, for instance, the coal price, because that's what their power price is based on. So, of course, uranium prices remain low, so their nuclear generating margins are quite high. So countries like France will probably be buying a lot of uranium from these countries if they haven't developed their own infrastructure. It'll always go to where the highest price is paid for the uranium.